And we are live. Welcome to the Detroit Lions News Podcast. I'm your host, Joe Chap. We're going to be talking about all things Detroit Lions. So let's get to it right now. All right, welcome to Detroit Lions News Podcast. Obviously, it's a preseason game, but let's get into the mode of doing post-game podcasts. And look, we got a lot of stuff to talk about with the Detroit Lions in terms of the way the game went against the New York Giants. But if you're new to the podcast and you want to follow it, you go here. You can follow the podcast there. It's very very easy. It's an easy way to follow the podcast. Let's talk about what's the main key coming into this coming out of this game. We have a lot of injuries. Lions Dan Campbell says Hendon Hooker sustained a concussion in the second half versus the Giants. David Bada, who is an international player, he suffered Achilles injury. That's probably gonna be a long-term injury. Connor Galvin, another offensive lineman from Baylor, he's in his second year. He also sustained a knee injury. Both could be long-term. Obviously, when you've seen Galvin, he was getting carted off. That's never a good sign for anyone. And then you got Antoine Greene, who sustained a concussion, and then there was a bone bruise with James Houston. So all in all, like, Detroit did not stay healthy by no stretch of the imagination. You would hope that they could stay healthy in this game, but they did not stay healthy. So we start there. Obviously, injuries are, like a key to the game, and that's something that you kind of always worry about. Michael Bada, probably not a big worry. Connor Galvin, he could potentially be one of those guys that could have made the roster maybe as a practice squad. He's out now. You're worried about Hendon Hooker because if you watch Nate Sudfeld, which he was awful, that's going to be an issue. So we're going to have to monitor that. Antoine Greene, who was in the discussion to be in the competitiveness to, win the wide receiver position, he's also dealing with a concussion. So all in all, like, you're hoping that these guys stay healthy for the next two games, and especially the training camp, what's left of training camp. But Dan Campbell was talking to the media. He said the two players that stood out to him, well, there's three. Isaiah Williams, who was a wide receiver, he was leading the team in receiving. Mekhi Wingo and Ennis Rakestraw has got some really valuable reps early on too. And one of the things that I noticed about this Detroit Lions team is, like, early in the game, they were really showing themselves really, really good. Like, I was watching them play the ball, not play the man. They're looking for the ball. They're faster off the line of scrimmage. You can credit that to Terrell Williams, which we've talked at nauseum about. Terrell Williams he's just been obviously a great addition to that coaching staff, because every player on the defensive line, I think, got better. Like, you saw Nate Lynn get in there. You saw Isaac Awuku get in there. You saw Broderick Martin get in there and make some plays. And that's what you're trying to get out of preseason, because preseason is literally for the players that are, on the outskirts, or the young players that you want to see that you're not going to get the chance to see in a regular game because you're going to be playing to win. But it's just interesting. So the news and notes, obviously, Bates made that 53-yarder. Galvin left the game card off. We highlighted that. Hooker left the game with a concussion as well. Just not something that you were expecting with this Detroit Lions team, especially the way it went down. I thought offensively, I'm going to try to pull this slide up, but offensively, like, they did not play good at all. And I don't know about you, but, like, you can comment if you're watching this live on the Facebook. You can comment live. We'll get your comment right there, and we'll read your comment. But I just thought it was interesting the way that they played. The offense was not good at all. So I'm gonna add this slide in there. Hold up. The offense all in all was not good. And if you look at the yards per play, wasn't good. I was disappointed by it. Obviously, Nate Sudfeld, he wasn't good. And if Hendon Hooker is out for a period of time, yes, you got to think about perhaps getting a backup quarterback to be in competition with Nate Sudfeld. The issue with it, and we talked about this at nauseum on the podcast when we were talking when Hendon Hooker was struggling and all that stuff. The issue with that is you bring a quarterback in right now, they're going to be a little bit behind this. They're going to be a little bit behind in the way the game plan is going to go, the way they're going to process the game plan, process the offense. They're not going to know the terminology. So when you get into those games, and let's say Jared Goff did go down in game one, you'd have a quarterback that would be coming in that would be a little bit, needs a little bit of time. We saw it with Teddy Bridgewater last year. Didn't look that great to start out with, but that was because he just got there. So that's the issue with bringing in a quarterback right now. So it seems like you're kind of stuck with what you got unless Brad Holmes makes a move relatively quick. So the stats for this game, Giants obviously won 14-3. Total yards, 228 to 249. This was not an offensive game by any stretch of the imagination. 110 yards passing for the Detroit Lions, 95 for the Giants, 118 rushing yards for the Lions, and 155 for the Giants. The Giants really did a good job on the ground. Yards per play, the Giants were about a full yard better than the Detroit Lions, and that's just something that you really can't have. And I know that, this is preseason. You just want to break it down. We're kind of going to go into a couple different topics here, but I looked at that game and I was a little bit perplexed the way the run game was going for the Giants. I thought that kid, Eric Gray, he was having a great game. 2 touchdowns, played well. I thought the one was a little bit kind of a missed assignment by someone in the middle. I didn't get the good glimpse on who it was, but it was a missed assignment. I thought he went a little bit too shallow inside and got caught in, and that's when Eric Gray cut up for the touchdown. So, again, if you're following the podcast, you can, if you want to listen to this tomorrow or whatever, you can go do that right there to follow the podcast. But all in all, like I wasn't really happy with the way the offense played. We know the offense wasn't really that great, but if you look at the box score, in terms of who did good and who who did good and whatever. I'm trying to pull it up. Nate Sudfeld was 13 for 24, 96 yards. He had an interception. He was sacked 4 times. He was just not good at all. But his quarterback rating was 48.6. You're not going to win with that. Hendon Hooker was 5 for 9, 36 yards. I wish he had 36 touchdowns. No sacks, 65 quarterback rating. He was also the leading rusher. Hendon Hooker was the leading rusher. And if you watch that one play where he just put his head down and really took it to the defender, that's what you like to see. But obviously, you don't want to see him get hurt. So that's a reason why it kind of is. That's a live and learn kind of situation. We saw it with Lamar Jackson. He's trying to, all these Russian quarterbacks, they're trying to protect their body, but they're also trying to go out at the same time. And sometimes that's what happens, a concussion. Hendon Hooker, again, led the team in rushing with 34 yards. Sion Vaki was 4 carries, 29 yards. He had a 7.3 average rush. Nate Sudfeld was third on the team with 14 yards. That tells you how bad the Lions' run game was today. All the talk about Jamar Jefferson and Craig Reynolds and Zonovan Knight, I didn't see any of it from any of those guys. Like, to be honest, I know that the offensive line wasn't that great, but at some point you have to make things happen. You have to get this is a dress rehearsal. So if you're in a dress rehearsal, you got to play your game, and it doesn't matter how you get to that point. You have to do that. So just very, very disappointed in the run game today. I know obviously I'd be disappointed in the pass. I'm disappointed in the pass game too, but with the rain that's coming down in New York, this was a perfectly running game, and they didn't do nothing on the ground except your 2 quarterbacks and Sione Vaki, who is a rookie. Isaiah Williams led the team in receiving with 4 receptions for 35 yards. He had 4 targets, so he really didn't drop off. Besides that, there's not much to really. Antoine Greene had 3 catches. And then you look at the Zonovan Knight had 2 catches. That's basically your whole team. Like it was basically they were spreading the ball around, and it was all right. The one player that I really want to highlight though is Malik Jefferson, and this is a guy that I thought had a great game. These were the 3 players that impressed me the most. Deron Gilbert. When you look at Deron Gilbert, 4 tackles, 4 solo tackles. He had a pass defense. He was really, really good as a linebacker. Malik Jefferson had 6 total tackles, a tackle for a loss, and 2 solo tackles. And then, Sione Vaki, obviously, the way he rushed the ball, that was really, really good. And Isaiah Williams, because obviously when you have 4 receptions for 35 yards and 8.8 average, you don't drop the ball. That's pretty damn good, in my opinion. We got some comments, so we're gonna hit those right now. Again, if you want to comment, you can comment. We'll talk. Erica says I'm worried about a backup quarterback. I'm not gonna lie to you. I'm not gonna lie to you. I am concerned about the backup quarterback position. Obviously, we've seen Hendon Hooker go in there and do a good job, 5 for 9, but we really don't know. So it's the art of the unknown. Do you know what you're getting into with the player that you have? We know what Nate Sudfeld is. We don't know what Hendon Hooker is yet. That's what worries me the most. Like, see, a lot of people downplay the backup quarterback position. It's really something that just irks me, because you have the backup quarterback position, right? No one on God's green earth last year thought that Jake Browning would save the Bengals season. No one. Not one person said, yeah, Jake Browning, when he gets in the game, he's going to save the Bengals season. Never happened. Joe Burrow goes down. He comes in. He saves their season. He literally does. He did a damn good job quarterbacking that offense. When Lamar Jackson went down with an injury, Tyler Huntley went in and did a pretty damn good job. You need those quarterbacks to come in and do the job. Am I comfortable with Nate Sudfeld or Hendon Hooker at the current time with the amount of times we've seen Hendon Hooker, which is 1 for a short period of time, and what we see from Nate Sudfeld? Am I worried about the backup quarterback position? Absolutely. Absolutely. And, I think Hooker with the ones would be fine. Yeah, you know what? Here's the thing. I think Hooker with the ones would be fine. Unfortunately, we won't get to see that, and that's the main thing. Erica also says Hooker just seems like a mobile quarterback, just like a Justin Fields wannabe. Look, I watched a lot of Hendon Hooker. Hendon Hooker is a pretty. I watch him at Tennessee a lot. I follow Tennessee pretty closely, and I can tell you Hendon Hooker is a good quarterback. The issue is when he came into the NFL, when he came from Tennessee, the one issue that he had was ball placement. The one issue he had was the intermediate throws, the short throws. He a little bit inaccurate sometimes. He had Jalen Hyatt. He had Cedric Tillman. It is what it is. But Hooker's a good quarterback. I think he'll be fine. I just think that a lot of people, we don't really know what we have right now, and that's the art of the unknown. Corey says, definitely worried about the backup. Honestly, I'm pretty worried about the backup too. I think that's one of the things I am worried about. Obviously, when the offense is as bad as it was today, I mean, you're not really thinking about what this team is able to do. Like when you look at this team and the way that they ran the ball, that's probably the most depressing thing out of this whole game. They couldn't run the ball. Your two of your 3 highest rushers were quarterbacks, Nate Sudfeld and Hendon Hooker. It's just not a good look. I expected more from the run game, but unfortunately, they didn't get it done. If you're looking for a little bit of a bright side, Mark Ryan, who is new to Detroit, he's going to do the Lions pregame this year. He said The last 3 Super Bowl champions lost their first preseason game. It's settled then. The Detroit Lions are 24 Super Bowl champions. Just you got to remember one thing about preseason. It's kind of like you want it to be you want to win, obviously. But the main thing is staying healthy and getting good contributions from your young players. And if you get that, it's all good. But what I seen today from what I saw today from the offense just wasn't good enough, especially the run game. But I'm interested in hearing a lot of people's comments. But when I look at this the team stats, like yards per pass 3.0. Obviously, it's in a rainstorm, but whatever. Rushing, they were 3.9. The Giants were 5.7 yards per rush. That's pretty damn good, if we're going to be honest. If you're new to the podcast, like obviously there's people tuning in, you could obviously hit the QR code and you can follow us along. We post podcasts every week, and especially during the season, we do 2 a week. But we got more comments, so we're gonna hit those right now. Jacob Thomas Wheeling says Red Hooker is on concussion protocol. Yeah, he is. And you know what? I hope he's okay. Hope it's kind of that 1 to 2 day where he comes back and he's all good to go. He's good to go for next week, because we really need to see more Hendon Hooker. If that's just the reality right now. Like, we need to see more Hendon Hooker because we don't really know what we have in Hendon Hooker. We saw glimpses and little parts, but we haven't saw we haven't seen much from Hendon Hooker. We are reliving another, obviously this comes out probably a couple times a year. The Lions were 0-16 once. They went 4-0 in the preseason. Yeah, I don't think anybody's overreacting to the loss. If you're overreacting to a preseason loss, I mean, I'm not going to do that. There's just things that you see during the game that you're a little bit upset about. Like, I don't know about you, what people were the most upset with, but I was upset with the rushing game. I thought that could have been better, but defensively, I really liked their game. I thought Aaron Glenn did a damn good job coaching that defense up during the offseason. You saw some glimpses of what they were doing. Like, I was happy that they were playing the ball, not the man. That's usually how you can get yourself in trouble when you play the man. Usually you're going to get some pass interference penalties. Not something that you really want to do. So that's one thing. Only the first game preseason. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. No one's overreacting to this game, but all in all, I mean, it's just you want a better showing. You want a better showing from your backup quarterbacks who are competing for a job. You want a better showing from your running game. Outside of Jahmyr Gibbs and Dave Montgomery, like, you want to see guys step up. And obviously, they didn't have the first offensive line and they didn't have the starters in, but you want to see guys kind of push for a spot. Last year, you didn't think you needed a third running back or a fourth running back until Jahmyr Gibbs was hurt and Dave Montgomery was hurt. And the next thing you know, you're with Craig Reynolds and Jared Goff has to pass. And that was just that Buccaneers game was a brutal game from that standpoint. Eric says Sudfeld and rushing. Yeah, Sudfeld was brutal. That's something I want to talk about. I don't know about you guys, but if you're in the comments, you could definitely comment and we'll talk about it. But the one thing I was a little bit upset about with Nate Sudfeld was it's not like he was just missing throws. He was underthrowing throws. He was missing people left and right. It didn't matter what he did. Like, he just couldn't hit his man, and that's something that you expect the veteran backup to do. I mean, if you wanted to be honest with me, I thought Hendon Hooker would do something like that because it is his first, NFL game, because it is his first chance at, that NFL product, and it's raining. He hasn't played in 2 years. I expected that from Hendon Hooker. I did not expect that from Nate Sudfeld. I really didn't. I thought Nate Sudfeld would at least come with a little bit of a better understanding, a little bit of a better idea. That's what I thought. But he didn't do good enough for me. But very, very interesting. Very, very interesting. Pulling up some tweets right now. Um look, it I I think there's a couple players that have that really showed out to be honest. Nate Lynn, I thought he had a really good spin move. Him and Hutch, I think Justin Rogers said something where they had the two prettiest spin moves on the team. Something to be intrigued about, but it's just interesting what we get ourselves into. All right. We got some comments. Jason Fuller says Sudfeld was terrible and terrible last preseason. I didn't expect them to make the team. You know what's funny? Like I didn't expect them to make the team either. Like I didn't expect them to re-sign him. I thought after last preseason and the knee injury, I thought that was it, right? I understand why they kept him because he knows the system, but at some point you got to go, okay, enough's enough. Like we need someone behind Goff that could actually like come in and be a good veteran quarterback. Instead, we're relying on Hendon Hooker to be that guy. It's a bad position to be in for one because it's too much pressure for practically a rookie. You know, him being in his second year. This is the first training camp, first taste of preseason. I thought Hooker looked pretty good in the few flashes we had, but to expect him to know what Nate Sudfeld knows about the offense, that's a little bit disheartening. Cody Lee says Sudfeld's been in the NFL too long, missing that poorly. Weather be damned, Sudfeld looked uninterested to be even there. Yeah, I thought. See, that's what pissed me off a little bit. If we're gonna be totally honest with each other, like I didn't think that the way that Nate Sudfeld played, by any stretch of the imagination, was any good. And the reason I thought Nate Sudfeld really it really just grinded my gears with Nate Sudfeld was I thought he could have had more crisper passes because there was an underthrow to Tom Kennedy early in the game, and I was perplexed because you usually don't see veteran quarterbacks of any ilk underthrow a player like that on an 11-yard out. Like it wasn't even like a post, like a 20-yard post, or it wasn't like a post up the middle. Sometimes you could see people, underthrow that. He underthrew an 11-yard out to Tom Kennedy. That was a little bit brutal, and I just felt like, man, Sudfeld has some good things about him. There's no doubt about it. Knowing the playbook, all that stuff. But man, it was just not a good showing for him. And next week's going to be huge for him. And they're going to be playing Kansas City. So that'll be interesting. Brett brings up a really good point. He says, at this point, I wouldn't hate going out and signing Tannehill. I follow the Tennessee Titans really closely because they're my Southern team, you know what I'm saying? Everyone's got that NFL team that's like their number 2 team that they kind of like latch on to for whatever reason. I like Tennessee in the state, so I was like, oh, Tennessee Titans, let's go. The thing you got to know about Tannehill is I think Tannehill would be perfect for here, and I'll give you a reason why. He needs a run game. Like he needs a run game, and he needs wide receivers that can make good catches. I look at Jamison Williams. I think he's going to blossom this year. I look at Amon-Ra St. Brown. I look at Sam Laporta, Jahmyr Gibbs, Dave Montgomery. I think this is the perfect spot for, Ryan Tannehill to come. If you were to make that decision, I mean, that's a pretty good backup to have behind Jared Goff. We know that Ryan Tannehill isn't this great quarterback by any stretch of the imagination, but he's a good backup. And when you talk about backup quarterbacks in this league, you talk about guys like Jake Browning, Tyler Huntley. You got rookie quarterbacks that are backup quarterbacks, but all in all, you look for guys that could that are veterans that can help you out. I mean, the Chiefs have Carson Wentz. That's who we'll see next week. I think they have Carson Wentz and Ian Book. That was from Notre Dame. Just that was a really good point by Brett about the Ryan Tannehill situation. I really do think Ryan Tannehill would be pretty damn good for the Detroit Lions right now. Eric says offense just felt completely different when Hooker was on the line for as little as he was. Eric, you bring up a really good point. You really do. Because I do agree with you. When Hendon Hooker came in the game, I saw a little bit of a flash of what the team was doing, everything like that. They were playing really, really good. Hooker comes out with the injury. They get stopped on that fourth down. Sudfeld comes in. You've seen a little bit Sudfeld get better when he came in for Hooker after the injury, but it wasn't good enough. And Sudfeld wasn't good by any stretch of the imagination, but I didn't imagine the rushing game being as bad as it did today. That was really perplexing to me. I mean, when you only get 118 rushing yards, I mean, I know there's no Dave Montgomery. I know there's no Jahmyr Gibbs, but these are guys that are fighting for a spot. And we've talked about it on the podcast before. The running back position it's a pretty lively position if you think about it. Dave Montgomery and Jahmyr Gibbs, obviously, they're going to get that number 1 and 2 role, but you got these guys fighting for the 3rd and 4th spot for the running backs. You got Craig Reynolds, you got Zonovan Knight, Vaki, Jake Funk, and Jamar Jefferson. I felt like Vaki was the best one today. And if it keeps up like this, you're going to be in a little bit of a situation because you're going to have Zio and Vaki, Jahmyr Gibbs, Dave Montgomery, and then you're going to have to name your 4th running back. And I didn't really see much out of anybody. I think Craig Reynolds would make the team, but besides that, like this was not the best effort from the run game by any stretch of the imagination. And obviously, with tackles, yep. So Connor Galvin is outside. I imagine this is just going off a little bit off script, but I imagine they go look for a tackle to kind of ease him in. I was really surprised how good Giovanni Manu did today. He was in for a couple plays. I thought he did really well on the offensive line. He didn't really stand out like most offensive linemen don't stand out, but I thought he did a pretty damn good job at where he was, because I always tell people, if you know the name of your backup offensive lineman in the preseason, it's usually not a good thing. So you really don't want to be the known offensive lineman. It usually means you're letting up a sack, you missed a block, something like that. We got a comment. Barry says, looked like the offense played better for Hooker. Yeah, like I said, Eric said it. You said it, Barry. The offense did play better with Hooker. There's no doubt about it. And I thought Hooker and Vaki, when they were in the game, I thought that was a really good combination. Once those two went out, it was a little bit hard. And I think that, Sudfeld didn't help anything. Zonovan Knight, Jake Funk, they didn't help anything. I was really disappointed with Jamar Jefferson. We heard all training camp how good he was doing. And he gets in the game and it's like he wasn't even there. I mean, he got a majority of the reps. I'm trying to pull it up. He got a majority of the reps today, and he didn't do much. He was just kind of there. So, yeah. So Jamar Jefferson, he had 5 carries, 9 yards in the 5 carries. Wasn't that good. Zonovan Knight had 12. Craig Reynolds had 11 with 4 carries. It wasn't like the rushing game was helping you out. And I thought if someone could have been the hot hand, they would have landed that third job. I think what you're looking for right now is, I think, obviously Vaki's made a name for himself right now at the running back position, which that might be a steal when we think about Brett Holmes making that draft decision. I think a lot of people are stunned by that draft decision by Brett Holmes, but he's been doing a pretty damn good job at getting depth on this team. And I look at a guy like Deron Gilbert. I look at a guy like Nate Lynn. I look at a guy like Isaac Iwuku, Mekhi Wingo, Broderick Martin. They all had good games. Isaiah Williams, a UDFA from Illinois. I thought he had a good game today too. Unfortunately, you just couldn't put enough drives together. And when you look at the drive charts, like it wasn't it wasn't like the Detroit Lions played awful offensively. They just they couldn't get the big yards. Like they couldn't get that big yardage play that you expect. I think if Hendon Hooker would have played more, they would have got bigger yards. But unfortunately, he didn't play as much as you would have hoped, and that's what it came down to. So yeah, obviously being the first preseason game, you expect a little bit of things to change leading into the second preseason game and the third preseason game. But I just look at it like this. We have a lot of battles on this team. Two tonight, we really didn't separate anybody except Isaiah Williams. I think you had two battles that you were looking at. Running back, who's going to be the third, fourth running back after Jahmyr Gibbs and Dave Montgomery. And then you had the wide receiver position. And obviously, when we looked at the wide receiver position, like you got all these guys. Obviously, we know Jameson Williams is going to be a guy that's going to be making the team. We know St. Brown's going to make the team. We know Khalif Raymond's going to make the team. It's who wants to make this team off this list. We heard of Darius Fountain. We heard of obviously we know Donovan Peoples-Jones has a chance to make the team. We know Maurice Alexander with his kick returning skills can make the team. He had 2 fumbles today in punt return, which was totally wild. But you're looking at this and you're going, who is going to win that position battle? Who is going to win? And that's what's going to be the key here. Because the way I see it, I don't see how you could judge any of these wide receivers or get a good glimpse of these wide receivers and go, yeah, that's where we're going to go. Because I thought the quarterback position was a little bit helter-skelter today. Obviously, when Hendon Hooker came in, you've seen a little bit of a better glimpse of what they were doing. But besides that, you really didn't get good play out of your quarterback. So how do you judge these wide receivers? I mean, in the first quarter, the second quarter, when Nate Sudfeld was in, those were horrible balls being thrown to the wide receivers. I mean, the play to Tom Kennedy, underthrow on a 10-yard, 11-yard out. Darius Fountain, I thought there was a play where Darius Fountain got bumped off his bumped off by coverage, and that's where Nate Sudfeld put the ball. When you went back and I went back with the DVR, and I did see that happen. So that was a little bit interesting. But you look at this team, man, and you're like, who is going to win those positions at the wide receiver and running back position? Because as we sit here right now, like the wide receivers, I mean, I think Isaiah Williams showed out. Running back, Vaki showed out. But besides that, who's going to win that fourth running back role? And who's going to win that, fifth, sixth wide receiver role? And you really don't think that matters. But at some point in the regular season, you're going to have an opportunity where you're going to have to place someone like this. So it's a very, very crucial situation that the Lions are under right now, because they didn't get good play out of their quarterback. And to be honest, if we're going to be honest with each other, running back was very disappointing today. I can't say it enough. I expected the pass game to be a little bit behind because of the rain and because of the weather. I did not think the run game would be as bad as it was today. Obviously Vaki came in, he did a damn good job. But besides that, like there was no running back that really made the decision easier to be the third or fourth running back. One thing I was really impressed by Jake Bates. And I don't say this often. I made a video. I talked about it last podcast. I said, look, I'm a little bit worried about Jake Bates when it comes to kicking outdoors, kicking in the rain. He did a damn good job today. 53-yard field goal in the pouring rain at MetLife, which MetLife, I don't know if you know, but MetLife is known as a kicker hellscape for these kickers. They don't like playing at MetLife because of the wind, the way it goes into the stadium. And we've seen Jake Bates have trouble outside in the UFL. So I was a little bit concerned about Jake Bates, and when he made that kick, I was like, man, that's excellent. And with Michael Badgley down and him having no kicking competition, that's something that you're really, really worried about. I mean, you got to worry about your kicker because a lot of people are worried about the quarterback position. I think the kicker position is pretty largely, especially with these new kickoff rules. I mean, we've seen how it played into the case. And, Dan Campbell said something in his press conference that I thought was very, very interesting. He said, Michael Badgley was originally doing those kickoffs, the new kickoff rule. It wasn't Jake Bates. So when Jake Bates went in, he's doing it. He's obviously doing it right now, but it's such a technical way. You have to be accurate. You have to have good ball placement where you're going to place that ball. That penalty that Jake Bates had, that was because he didn't really practice it that much because Michael Badgley was practicing that mostly. Like I thought that was very, very interesting what he said in his press conference just a short time ago. Comments. This is from Kim Reed. She said, only guy today to put points on the board was Jake Bates, who prior to the game got hung out to dry, shameful media treatment. I think she's talking about the majority of people. There's concern about having a rookie kicker. Like, last year the 49ers drafted Jake Moody, and he is a good kicker. We saw it at Michigan, how good of a kicker he is. Early on, he struggled. He missed a kick to win against Cleveland. He missed a couple kicks early against, in the season, and then he got better. You always worry about rookie kickers because even though Jake Bates did play in the UFL or whatever the hell it's called, the AFL or XFL or whatever the hell it's called, it's not the NFL. It's a totally different game. So he's coming in this game and he's coming to the NFL and it's a totally different ball game in terms of the way they kick, the players that are on the other side. There's not many athletic freaks like there is in the NFL, in the XFL or UFL or whatever the hell they call it now. But there was a reason for concern with Jake Bates because he's not having competition. His competition was Michael Badgley. Michael Badgley goes down with an injury. They don't bring anybody in. Obviously, the team feels confident about Jake Bates. But it is what it is. I think that, Kim, you mentioned it, a lot of people hung him out to dry. Obviously with the media, there was a couple practices where he had a bad couple practices. So obviously people were hanging on that. And when you have a rookie kicker like Jake Bates, I mean, you're always concerned about your rookie kickers. I always tell people like kickers are like goalies. They are like closing pitchers, and they are like they're head cases. So you usually don't see rookie kickers last in the NFL. Ivan McPherson for Cincinnati rings a bell, but there's been a lot of rookie kickers that have really flamed out in the NFL. So that's one reason that people should be concerned about your rookie kicker. But that 53-yarder that he hit, that was really good, and I was really surprised by how good of a kick that was. It wasn't one that just got over the bar or anything. It had a lot of leg to it, and it was accurate. It wasn't just like one of those kicks that, could have went sideways. Chris says, I'm questioning the draft. Sudfeld is not good. Bates needs some reps, and DC went for it. I thought the same thing about Dan Campbell going for it. It's a good point by Chris. Here's the thing. I understand why he went for it because of the situation that they're in. Obviously, it being rainy out. He just I don't. There was a couple times where he could have kicked the field goal, but he instead went, wanted to go for it. I imagine he was trying to figure out things in terms of what players can be counted on fourth down, that type of stuff. I think Jake Bates showed enough today to for you to go, okay, Jake Bates showed enough. We got enough from the kicker. We saw him kick a 53-yarder in the rain. Okay, we're good. Let's work on our fourth down calls. Let's work on our fourth down. Who's going to be a player that we could trust? That's what's going to really impact him making the roster. So that's what I thought. But the draft, I don't question about Brad Holmes. I don't question the draft at all. I thought, the draft that he had, your two, I thought Ennis Rakestraw early on had a great practice. I mean, a really good, I'm not practice, a really good game. I thought early on he had some good reps out there. Terrion Arnold, another one. He played pretty well. Mekhi Wingo, who Dan Campbell said in the post game stood out, was Mekhi Wingo. Is it this one? No, it's this one. Dan Campbell said along with Mekhi Wingo and this Rakestraw. So those are your two defensive players that you drafted. So I don't really see anyone that's going, okay. The draft was good. The draft was really, really good. But it's just interesting. Let's see what's going on. All right. Pride of Detroit has this article. So I want to read this right here because I think it's pretty good article. It was, what did we learn in this game? Just lost it. They talk about the pass rush battle. It heats up with the starters resting. The Lions got plenty of looks at their backup pass rushers. There are plenty of them. Undrafted rookies Isaac Ukwu and Nate Lynn were overwhelming the backup Giants tackles. That's what I talked about early on. Nate Lynn, Owuku. If you follow this podcast, which you could follow right here, if you want to follow our podcast on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. I've talked about it before. Owuku is a talented player. He's out of Ole Miss. I don't know if you guys follow college football that much, but he's a good player. And I thought he really did a damn good job tonight. I thought he was doing a really good job. So let's go on. James Houston is probably perhaps the favorite for the Sam linebacker spot, but having a modest showing, his lead in the roster battle might not be significant. Matthew Betts has professional experience and looked like a prime candidate to take Houston's spot, but he did not appear into the game till the second half. Michael Adude, meanwhile, was quiet in his Lions debut. We all know about the backup quarterback woes. We don't need to go over that. Back blocking, we all know about that. The run game was brutal. We talked about the wide receiver battle, how no one's really separating themselves. So very interesting. I thought it was a very interesting game. We got some comments. Let's get through these comments. Keep up the good work, my guy. I appreciate it. Thank you very much. Look, we're going to go into the regular season. We're going to have more post-game podcasts like this live. We're going to go live at least twice a week, probably, for our podcast. So you can always watch on the Detroit Lions News channel or my Twitter account, Detroit Joe Chap, and you could talk there. But all in all, if we're going to go over it again, I don't think I was disappointed in anything today. I really did think that this team was going to have a better showing rushing wise. Passing wise, I really didn't expect much because if you think about it in reality, the rain was horrendous. Hurricane Debbie was coming towards New York. So it was obviously the leftovers. So it's not a hurricane force winds, but the rain was coming down. You could see it noticeably on the TV. So I didn't expect much out of the past game when I looked at the weather early on. But I did expect more of the run game. And I did expect more out of James Houston. This line that they say from the Pride of Detroit article, which this was written by John White Withcar, who was the Canadian on the Pride of Detroit, which James Houston was really underwhelming today. I don't know about you. We saw him make that play on Drew Lock, the hit. But otherwise, it was a very underwhelming experience by James Houston. I don't know about you, if you feel the same way as I do, but James Houston really disappointed me today. I expected a lot more from him, a lot more, because we know what he's able to do. But when you're going up against backup players, I expect you to show out. And when a guy like Isaac Owuku takes a chance, a guy like Nate Lynn takes a chance, you're like, where are you, James Houston? And why aren't you making big plays? Because that's an issue in itself, man. Like we talk about all the time, like on this podcast, like Tyler, when he's on, we talk about it. James Houston's a fabulous player, but I don't know where he was today. And he's got a roster battle to deal with. He's got to make the roster, and his performance tonight did not really help his case. Donald, what up, Donnie? He said DPJ looking good. Look, if you want a wide receiver that looked good, even Dan Campbell mentioned this in his press conference, was Isaiah Williams. Do I think Donovan Peoples-Jones was good? It's debatable, but like I said earlier in the podcast, how do you get a good read of these wide receivers when your quarterbacks weren't really helping you out? Especially Nate Sudfeld early on wasn't helping you out. You really didn't get a good read on these quarterbacks because your quarterback weren't good. So Sudfeld, Hooker when he came in, you expected a little bit more. They didn't give it to you. But it's just, I thought James Houston was pretty underwhelming for the majority of that game. But Malik Jefferson, like I said, one of the guys that I was really impressed by. Just full stop. He played really, really good. I thought he had some really good tackles. I thought he read the plays really, really well. And if the Lions are looking for another linebacker, I think Malik Jefferson really showed out to show that perhaps he can make the roster, and maybe he can help out on special teams. That's something that the Lions really covet, and especially with this new kickoff rule, it'll be interesting how they put together the team in terms of special teams and what they want on special teams, and that stuff. We got a comment. Brandon Joseph interception was nice, but yeah, not a lot to. Jason says the interception was nice, but yeah, not a lot to get excited about. Yeah, all in all, there was not a lot to get excited about. This is probably one of the most disappointing preseason games I've felt in a long time. Not just because I'm not disappointed in the result. I'm disappointed in the way that they played. There's a difference because this Lions team is supposed to be a Super Bowl caliber team. Tonight, the players that played did not show that by any stretch of the imagination. And your run game is supposed to be good. That wasn't good. You expect your rushing game to help you out in bad weather. It didn't. Whether that's on the offensive line, which there was missed blocking assignments. The blocking today was putrid, awful. Hank Fraley's got to go back to the drawing board with some of these, second string and third string and fourth string guys because they weren't cutting it tonight. But you look at guys like Zonovan Knight, you look at guys like Zonovan Knight, Vaki did good behind the same line, so there's no excuse there. Vaki did a pretty damn good job. He showed out, but I think that they wanted to get him out at a certain point. Nathan says, any more Hooker updates? Yeah, there's a Hooker update. Dan Campbell spoke after the game. He said, Dan Campbell says, this is from Danny Rogers, DetroitLions.com. Dan Campbell says quarterback Hendon Hooker sustained a concussion in the second half versus the Giants. So we're on a little wait and see how he is, and we'll probably hear more about it probably Friday, Saturday, maybe next Tuesday when they go back to practice or whenever they go back to practice, next press conference. I'm sure one of the media members is going to ask that. So it'll be very, very, that's an interesting one to follow because if he's not ready by next week, what do you do? Do you go I think it was Brent earlier in the podcast. I think Brent was earlier in the podcast. Where am I? Brett brought up this good point. He said, at what point do you think about going out and getting Ryan Tannehill? And if Hendon Hooker concussion goes into next week, I think you look into it. I think you have to look into it because I don't know about you. I don't know about you, but I see these comments. Especially Mike. He's not happy about Sudfeld. He said Sudfeld sucks. Sudfeld was not good today. Look, one of the worst performances I've ever seen from a backup quarterback position. That's a veteran. I mean, it was just brutal. I mean, it gave me vibes back to Tim Boyle. We all know how that charade went. Tim Boyle was awful. One of the worst quarterbacks the Lions ever had. You know what's funny? I was thinking about this the other day. When the Lions are bad, it seems like we always had a good backup quarterback. And when the Lions are good, we don't have that backup quarterback. Likewise with the kicker. We had Eddie Murray, we had Jason Hanson, and when we get good, we get Michael Badgley. Like, can we get some help, from the other side where we get the good kicker like Prater or Hanson or Eddie Murray? Like, that would be great right now. Donald says agreed. He's a bum. He says. Yeah, I'm not happy about Nate Sudfeld, but we got to see what happens with Hendon Hooker. And I think they got a really big dilemma on their hands because I don't really think that you can go into this season coming up. I don't think you're going into the Rams game and saying, we think Nate Sudfeld can come in and win us a game when Jared Goff gets hurt, if he gets hurt. No, I don't think you're saying it at all. I don't think anyone's saying it at all. Like, do you really trust Nate Sudfeld? Like, obviously he would have the number. He would have St. Brown and he would Sewell and Gibbs, and I don't think they would I don't think if Sudfeld was put into a game, I don't think they would let Sudfeld pass the ball once. The Lions would just probably run it all day long, which they can do. But like, if that happened, there is no way they're passing, and then you don't want to be a one-dimensional team. We see how that goes. Zach Wilson in New York, that was pretty much a good showing of what happens when you have a good running game and you have a bad quarterback. And a guy like Garrett Wilson is rendered useless. So very interesting. But yeah, I thought what Brett brought up earlier in the podcast, that's something that I think that Detroit Lions should look into. I know that there has been some, rumors about potentially, there was a couple of days ago, there was a trade scenario from ESPN. It was the Lions get Taylor Heineke, and the Falcons receive a 2025 7th round pick. If that is the case, if it's the case that you can go get Taylor Heineke for a 7th round pick, I'm all for it. Likewise, if you can get Ryan Tannehill, I'm all for it. We don't know what Hendon Hooker is. And it would be nice to know if we can get a good glimpse of what Hooker is, but we don't know his status right now. So I'm pretty sure Brad Holmes is going to home and saying, all right, he's probably going to Dan Campbell and saying, look, what do you think about the quarterback position? And I can't imagine Dan Campbell saying, oh, I think it's just great. Because if you look at the backup quarterback position, there's a lot to be desired. I think the Lions expected a lot more from Sudfeld. Like, you heard about him being pretty good in practices, and he wasn't good at all in this game. So, last year was the same thing. Last year they talked about Sudfeld, and they said Sudfeld was doing so good in training camp, and then he got to the preseason, and he was total ass. I don't know what's going on. Maybe he performs better in the training camp scenario, but it's just not good enough for a team that's heading towards Super Bowl. That's what it is. So, obviously I have high hopes in Hendon Hooker. His status, his health status is very interesting right now. Hopefully, we'll know more in the next couple of days. But if you're Brett Holmes, you think about everything. You literally think about everything. You think about going to get a backup quarterback. That's what they're gonna have to look at because we all know Hendon Hooker is uberly talented, but at some point, like, you got to understand this is his first training camp, his first preseason reps. He needs a lot of reps. We hear Dan Campbell say it all the time, but it comes to a point where because you're a Super Bowl caliber team, do you make that move and say, look, we're not going to leave this up to a rookie, a second year player who's basically a rookie. We're not going to leave this up to Nate Sudfeld. We're going to go get that backup quarterback position. You might see that, because if I'm Brad Holmes, that's something I'm looking at. Nathan Flores says, Hooker's play style reminds me of Justin Fields. However, if concussions continue to be a problem, maybe he needs to play how Jared Goff does and not run the ball. Nate, this is a good comment, and I really respect your comment because I think it's a good point. I think a lot of people, me in particular, are scared of the running quarterback for this reason alone. Obviously, if you have a running quarterback like Lamar Jackson or Josh Allen or guys like that, they run the ball, they do a damn good job, they get out of the pocket. The problem is when you have a quarterback like this and they're taking direct hits to their body, at some point, they're going to get broken down, because we see how running backs get broken down. We see how wide receivers get broken down. So these running quarterbacks that run all the time, you worry about the longevity. That's number one. Even with Jalen Hurts last year, like you look at Jalen Hurts last year, wasn't the same quarterback. Yes, everyone thinks he was hurt. Probably was. Didn't seem like the same quarterback. When you're a running quarterback, you put yourself in positions where you're going to take a lot of direct contact. If I was Dan Campbell, if I was Mark Brunell, who is the quarterback's coach, I'm talking to Hendon and I'm saying, look, that was a great play that you made. Lowering your shoulder, getting the yards, but next time just slide. I think that's something that Hooker can learn, because I think a lot of the good quarterbacks, they use the running ability and then they slide. So if you have to get someone in there that's a baseball guy to show Hooker how to slide the right way, fine. I think that would be great. But like we said, this is Hooker's first game in the NFL. And I think that was that welcome to the NFL type moment. I don't think Hendon Hooker is like Justin Fields at all. If you watch him at Tennessee, not even close to the same player. He made runs, but he didn't run it like Justin Fields ran it at Ohio State, and he didn't run it like he did with the Bears. Hooker's kind of a guy, he'll take off and run when it's needed. He's not going to be a run first kind of guy. It's just not the way Hooker rolls. So I'm not really worried about him. I just need him to protect himself. And that's what you worry about with these running quarterbacks. Like the mobile quarterback, you worry about them taking that direct hit to the legs, to the chest, to the arms, to the head, wherever they're taking the direct contact to, because you are taking direct contact. And once you're a runner, you're a runner. You're not a quarterback no more. You're a runner. And, guys like Justin Fields, guys like Jalen Hurts, Josh Allen. Like Josh Allen's he's a freakazoid. He runs over people consistently, and nothing ever happens to him. But it's only a matter of time before something does, because you don't get that lucky in the NFL. And I know Josh Allen is a freakazoid, but that's what worries me about these mobile quarterbacks. A lot of people were mentioning that Jared Goff's not mobile, so they wanted a mobile quarterback. When you have a mobile quarterback, this is the way that you could really this one dynamic can change your team in a flash. At least with Jared Goff, that he's not going to take off and run. He's not going to put himself in a position where he's going to get mauled over by a safety. He's not going to get mauled over by a linebacker. He's not going to get mauled over by a cornerback. He's going to just stand in the pocket, make the right read, and throw. And, the good quarterbacks do that. Obviously Mahomes is a little bit of a different breed because he's a passer, but he likes to run sometimes, and he can be mobile. But most of the time, he's a pass first guy. So these pass first guys, they're going to do well. I think Hendon Hooker is a pass first guy. Watched him at Tennessee. He wasn't really a guy that ran the ball that much, to be honest. But it is an interesting dynamic that everyone brings up with Hooker's mobility. Does this really change the perspective of the way he plays? So I don't think he's going to be like a Justin Fields type. So, obviously, Nate, you brought that up about the Hooker's play style reminds me of Justin Fields. He's not like Justin Fields, but what you really want to do is say, look, we know that you wanted to run. We know you wanted to make an impact in the game, but at some point, you just got to make the right play and just slide and protect yourself. And I think that Brett Holmes, Dan Campbell, Mark Brunell, they're all going to say that. And I'm pretty sure there's going to be defensive coaches coming up to Hendon Hooker and saying, you know what, dude, next time protect yourself. That's the most important thing. Like you see a lot of quarterbacks protecting themselves with the slide, but a lot of times you slide too late, you can get a concussion. Mobile quarterbacks are just they're an insurance policy that you have because they can run, but you don't want to do it. You don't want to see what Hendon Hooker did today. I'm pretty sure the Lions are going to have a pretty good talk with him and saying, like, look, great highlight, but please don't do that ever again. So I think Hendon Hooker will be fine, but all in all, just a disappointing night for the Lions. I really wasn't excited about the way that they ran the ball. Like I said earlier, not happy about the running the ball, and the injuries suck. Obviously, getting guys like we'll go over the injuries again for the people that just joined. The Lions, Dan Campbell said Hooker sustained a concussion. Defensive lineman David Bada, who is part of the international program, he had an Achilles injury. Connor Galvin, a knee injury. Both could be long-term. Antoine Greene also sustained a concussion. And then another tweet, I think it's from Justin Rogers. He talked about James Houston suffering a knee bruise. So that will be interesting to watch as well. If you're new to if you're watching the podcast, just if you want to go to our podcast and get our podcast, to your Apple library or Spotify or Amazon, just scan the QR code and you'll get it there. But just to wrap up the podcast, Lions lose today 14-3, 228 total yards for the Detroit Lions, 249 for the Giants, 110 passing yards, 95 for the Giants, 155 rushing yards for the Giants to the Detroit Lions, 118 rushing yards. And then you look at yards per play, 1.2 better in the Giants category. The Giants really did a good job at, the yards per play, and they did a damn good job at making things happen. So very, very interesting the way this game went down. Hopefully we see a better team in Kansas City. And then in the last preseason game, which I believe is, I forget who it's against, but they got to be better in the next two games. And there's a lot of questions that are coming out of this game in particular, mainly about the quarterback position. I think people are like, okay, Nate Sudfeld really struggled. Hendon Hooker, concussion. Then you look at the running back position. Who's going to grab that third and fourth spot? Sion Vaki did a damn good job tonight, but someone's got to grab that fourth spot. And we heard all about how Jamar Jefferson was doing his damn good job at training camp. I didn't see it. Didn't see it today. So he's got to show up more. And then you look at the wide receiver position. Isaiah Williams, who Dan Campbell lauded in the press conference. That was the guy who stood out. So if you're Donovan Peoples-Jones, if you're, Calhoun, if you're a guy like that, got to be better. Where's the wide receivers? You're right here. You got all these players fighting for one position, for potentially three spots. So we know Khalif Raymond, Jameson Williams, and St. Brown are going to make the team. There's no doubt about it. But the rest of these guys are fighting for a spot. And who's going to fight for a spot and win tonight? That belongs to Isaiah Williams. Tonight, Isaiah Williams showed out, and Dan Campbell said that in the press conference. So if you're a guy on this sheet right here, I think it's time to step up. If you're a guy like Donovan Peoples-Jones, you need to play at a better level. I expect more out of you. If you're Maurice Alexander, I need more from you. Jalen Calhoun, I need more from you. We heard about Caden Davis in training camp, need more from you. Darius Fountain, Antoine Green, need more from you. Obviously, the quarterback position didn't help these wide receivers because the quarterback position was largely incompetent tonight with the weather and everything, but we should get a better look at it next week against Kansas City. So thank you for joining me on the Detroit Lions News podcast. We'll go live after every game. We'll also do live podcasts during the week, so stay tuned. And if you didn't get the chance to scan the QR code, here's a QR code which takes us to our. If you're on the Twitter, it'll take you to the Facebook. It'll take you to Instagram, wherever you want, and it's all the podcasts, all that stuff. YouTube page, which we have, JC Sports. So scan the QR code if you want to know more about the Detroit Lions news podcast and you want to get to subscribe, rate, review. I appreciate it. We're closing in on 100 episodes of this. I've gotten better. Earlier, someone said that my voice was annoying. I know it can be annoying sometimes, but I just try to, give good insight into the Lions because I've been covering this team for 11 years now with the Detroit Lions News page. That's now Detroit Lions News podcast. So I try to do my best. I come with unique perspectives and I try to help out because, look, we're all Lions fans. We all want this team to do good. And I just think that I come with a unique perspective. So that's why we do what we do. And so thank you for everyone that was watching. Thank you for everyone that was commenting. I really, really appreciate you. It means the world to me how many people were watching tonight. But thank you for watching. I'll see you in the next podcast, Detroit Lions News podcast. Wherever you get your podcast, you can search it up. And we'll see you midweek next week before the Kansas City game. And then I'll have some YouTube videos that'll come out on the Lions page and my Twitter page. So follow on the bottom of the screen, Detroit Joe Chap at X, One Pride Detroit on Instagram. I'm going to be more active on TikTok during the season, so we'll get to that. But thank you for watching. Like I said it before, I totally am so appreciative of every one of you. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you guys in the next podcast. And go Lions.